Welcome to Manga's Seal YouTube channel. The previous video link is on the description box or on the top right card. Volume 15, The Half-Elf Godkin. Excusing herself, Aura stepped away from her master and Lumiere to take out a necklace. This necklace was a legacy class item that allowed for two-way communication with its pair. Although it was a relatively weak item, she always kept it equipped because the item's ability was inaccessible to the user unless it had been continuously equipped for 2 days. Usually items with such special conditions tended to be strong, but that was not the case for this necklace. Moreover, since a condition for the necklace's usage was that the speaker must hold it in hand, it was difficult to use during tough battles. But those limitations mentioned above are the item's only usage restrictions, and it does allow for indefinite two-way communication. It was debatable whether such an item was good enough to warrant taking up an equipment slot. Mayor Ains came to visit. After a short silence, Mayor's voice echoed in her head. Ains came here in person. What's going on? What else could it be? It's an inspection. Yeah. Probably to check if we and the area guardians are properly managing this floor. He decided to inspect only the recently altered field of flowers for now, but we should double check that the area guardians are not slacking off right now. Is it because this floor is the one with the most outsiders? Or is he just visiting each floor in turn? Maybe that's the case. Something clicked into place inside of Aura's mind. Of course, it could have been nothing more than Aura's own imagination, but she thought that Mayor was probably right. Ains said he had two objectives in mind, but this is Ains we're talking about. I don't think that it's just those two. Maybe putting some pressure on us like this was his unspoken third objective. Maybe he is confirming that we are handling our most important and fundamental responsibilities diligently, even though our work outside is greatly increased. They had a vague idea as to why he was doing this. Those who had once envied Albedo and Demiurge for their packed schedules, for example, Sheltier and Cocytus, were now increasingly being assigned work outside of Nazarick. They had been given the opportunity to demonstrate their loyalty with their extraordinary military accomplishments, especially during the destruction of the kingdom. Perhaps their master had noticed the kind of festive mood this had created. No matter what auxiliary duties they may have been conferred, Aura and the others were first and foremost floor guardians of the great underground tomb of Nazarick. They had the absolute and unchanging duty of defending, managing, and controlling the floors that they had been assigned. Maybe Ainz wanted to make sure they were not neglecting their most fundamental duties, in light of their increasing engagement with their newly assigned duties. For Aura and Mayor, receiving a dissatisfactory rating directly from their master was the same as saying they had failed as floor guardians. If the other floor guardians, especially the guardian overseer Albedo, heard of this, they would surely reprimand the twins while staring daggers at them. The fact that their master had not told them directly was probably an act of kindness. Maybe he anticipates that we will spread the word of our inspection to the other floor guardians, which would motivate them to get their affairs in order. That's possible. In that case, that might be his fourth objective. I'm sure that there must be something more. Aura couldn't think of anything more. The same went for Mayor. It was a little frustrating for them to think the Demiurge or Albedo would surely be able to anticipate Ainz's goals much more accurately than they could. Anyhow, let's make preparations. Make preparations. Sorry. I haven't told you yet. Didn't I say earlier that Ainz had two objectives? The first was the inspection, and the second was to meet with the elves that were assigned to those vacant rooms. Those people. They're so noisy, always going royal family this, royal family that. I hope Ains takes them away. Mayor spoke with a hint of annoyance in his voice. Mayor, his favorite pastime was lounging about on his feud and seemed to be regarded by those three as someone that was incapable of properly taking care of himself, and so they ended up trying to care for him many more times over than they did for Aura. This included hanging up his feud to dry, helping him get dressed, and sometimes even attempting to bathe him. This was quite too much for Mayor, but as he had been entrusted with their well-being by his master's orders, he couldn't just bluntly refuse their efforts at caretaking. Fan and Quadricilla close by. I don't know how long it will take for them to get here, but make preparations immediately, Mayor. Leave it to me. Aura cut the connection with Mayor and returned back to her master. If any invaders having experienced the horrors of Nazarick were to gaze upon the field of flowers with its myriad flowers in bloom on the 6th floor, they would probably think that it was concealment for some flower-mimicking monster or deadly trap. But there was no such thing here in this place. Even though the place invited extreme suspicion, the fact of the matter was that there were no traps here awaiting the intruders. There existed flower-mimicking plant and insectoid monsters in Yggdrasil, but no such monsters were placed here. Furthermore, there wasn't even an area guardian stationed here, unlike what was usually the case with such areas. This place, which could be considered to be under Aura and Mare's direct supervision, was really just a beautiful flower field. Certainly, there had been plans to turn it into a trap. There was no way that any intruders that managed to reach the 6th floor would regard this place to be a mere flower field. They would either be wary and hesitant to approach, or they would take the initiative and burn it away with fire-based attacks that possess secondary effects. As a countermeasure for such an occasion, there were talks of growing plants that would disperse lethal poison or a paralyzing agent when stimulated by fire. However, the 3 female members of the guild vehemently opposed such an idea, and so the plan was reworked. The result was this unassuming field of flowers. That was how Ainz remembered the field of flowers, but the field looked different now. Buds large enough to encompass an entire person rose out of the field of flowers. There were 12 of them. A single glance was enough to find them, or rather, one would be certain that there was definitely something suspicious going on. Ainz examined his memories. There were many monsters in this world that Ainz did not know of, but Ainz was sure that a similar monster had existed in Yggdrasil. A recollection flashed through his mind like a shooting star. Am I correct in thinking that's an Alraune? Yes, that's correct. They were not originally placed in Nazarick, nor were they among those summoned after Nazarick's arrival in this world. There was no doubt that they were a foreign species, one of those brought from the great forest of Tob. In the center of the field of flowers, there was a shovel stuck firmly into the ground. This was a divine class item named Earth Recover. Earth Recover was a divine class item with ridiculously high durability, but on the other hand its offensive capabilities were extremely low. That was because most of its data capacity was dedicated to secondary abilities. Also in the field of flowers was a magical beast resembling a giant Angora rabbit, a spear needle. The idyllic scene of it sitting in the middle of the field of flowers munching on a giant carrot had a fairy tale-like charm, but that was probably not the reason why it was placed here. While Ainz couldn't confirm his suspicions without asking Aura, he strongly suspected that it was here as a warden. Despite its appearances, it was still a creature whose level was in the high 60s. Whatever the Alraunes might get up to, there was no doubt that it could easily annihilate them should the need arise. By the way, the carrot that the child over there is gnawing on was gathered from the farm. Knissen and the other plant-type monsters used their respective powers to give it large amounts of nutrients, which transformed it from a normal carrot into that giant thing. Not nurtured but transformed. Is it safe to let it eat that then? Though weak poisons would have no effect on something of that level. It's not poisonous. I checked with the head chef, and he gave it passing marks as an ingredient. Regrettably, it doesn't provide any buffing effects unlike the materials that were originally stored in Nazarick. It has simply grown bigger and sweeter. That's a great success as a foodstuff, isn't it? Can the ordinary farmers of the Sorcerer Kingdom cultivate it? It's impossible. At present, it's difficult to grow them in large quantities, even with the help of the plant-type monsters. Even if we use the power of Earth Recover, it seems that just one of them can suck up a considerable amount of the soil's nutrients. It won't go so far as turning the land into a desert, but unless we use magic to recover the soil's nutrients, the fields would need to be left fallow for at least a year. As Ainz and the others looked over the field, one of the buds, the largest one, slowly unfurled. That's the Alraune Lord. It's in charge of all 14 Alraunes here. Aura introduced it briskly. There was no doubt she was talking about the Alraune that was opening up. 14. Ainz quickly asked, sneakily recounting the number of Alraunes. Not 12. Yes. The other 2 were recently born and are hiding by the flowers. Should I drag them out? No, there's no need for that. Born inside Nazarick, would it be counted as one of Nazarick's monsters? Or was it different? What were its abilities? Many questions came to his mind, but before he could ask Aura, the bud had finished blooming. As he had expected, inside was a feminine-looking monster. Rather, it looked very similar to some monsters he had seen in Yggdrasil. For something named as a lord of his kind, not much was different about it, except for its size. Its hair and eyes were the same color as the petals of its flower, and its entire body was green, the same color as its stalk. It was not wearing any clothes, but since its skin seemed to be formed from an amalgam of thin stems, it looked rather uncanny. The features that were probably eyes were slanted upwards and didn't look friendly at all. It gave the impression that the owner of those eyes was irritated. Suddenly, Ainz felt a brief pang of nostalgia. It reminded him of a certain girl from the Holy Kingdom with a pair of fierce-looking eyes. Ainz wasn't one to remember faces easily, but those eyes were something that left a deep impression on him. The monster's expression warped into something wicked. Good morning, Aura-sama. On behalf of the green races, I give you thanks for the wonderful sunlight we have received today. There was no hostility in that crystal-clear voice. On the contrary, Ainz could even sense some respect. It seemed that the smile from before was just a sincere expression of welcome, though even now he couldn't help but feel that it was plotting something behind that smile. The other Alraunes rustled their petals, but it didn't look like they planned to open up. However, they could be seen stealing glances at Ainz, their heads unable to be completely obscured by their petals. Not knowing what that behavior signified, it could not be said that they were being impolite. Perhaps this was an expression of utmost respect in Alraune culture. And so, the Alraune lord turned his gaze towards Ainz. This is the ruler of the great underground tomb of Nazarg, the king among kings who completely dominates not only that forest, but also this entire area, who founded the Sorcerer Kingdom, where many diverse races may live together in peace. The absolute ruler, His Majesty, the Sorcerer King Ains Ooal Gown. After Aura proudly announced Ainz's presence, the Alraune lord's face turned even more wicked. The petals of the other Alraunes trembled and they slowly started to hide their faces. Was this because they were alarmed or afraid? Or maybe this was a sign of great admiration. He couldn't be sure from their expressions alone, but Ainz felt like it was probably the latter. It's an honor to receive your grace, sovereign of this land, the ruler of the Sorcerer Kingdom, and above all, the master of fearsome and fearsome, your Majesty, the Sorcerer King Ains Ooal Gown. Her wide open arms were probably a form of greeting. I am named Violet. I am pleased to make your acquaintance. Oi, isn't that just the color of your hair? Ainz thought. To put it simply, it was a straightforward name with little thought put into it. Not that this was something that Ainz could say out loud. Making fun of a name that had probably been given to it by his parents to his face was not a good idea. I will remember it. Anyhow, this land is entrusted to Aura and Mare. It is unlikely that there will ever be a situation in which you receive direct instruction from me. You should continue to act in accordance with the twins' orders. He ended his sentence with vague words because he did not know how the twins were managing these Alraunes. Ainz had experienced for himself the troubles that could crop up when the CEO and department head gave conflicting orders.